tropical depression number 11 makes its way across the Atlantic Ocean. Could possibly be Josephine by the end of the day. Are we going to run out of names? Welcome back, my friends. August 12th, 2020, 1:02 p.m. That's a lot of twos right there. We are tracking Tropical Depression number 11. And yes, we could see this become Tropical Storm Josephine by the end of the day, our 11th named storm of the year. I actually just read an article put out by Click Orlando about 6 days ago. And basically what this article says in a nutshell is that each year we basically use 21 names. For the most part, we don't use the letter Z or Q, and there's a few other letters in there we don't use, which leaves us with 21 named storms for the year to use. Now, according to the newest projections of the season, we could be dealing with a much busier season than we already thought we were going to have. 19 to 25 named storms as far as an update coming on August 6th. Now, if we do get through that 21st letter, we go to the Greek alphabet. Basically, it'd be alpha, beta, gamma, those types of names will replace, and we'll go back to the letter A. This happened, I believe, in 2005. We had to reuse names. I'll verify that. But as of right now, this is the only article I could find that really talks about what we would do in the case of running out of these storm names. NOAA now says 19 to 25 storm names. That's very important, guys, as we're looking at Josephine. So we'll get into this information a little bit later, but I want to show you some charts on Josephine and where we are headed. Once again, the loop here, as we can see, is showing a little bit of formation as we're expected to reach that tropical storm intensity by the end of the day. Shear winds are playing a part in this. Right now, they're actually letting the storm form, but later on, closer to Saturday, as we get closer to the Leeward Islands, right about here, because we're going to see this thing tracking in a western northwest direction. It's expected to loop up this way and possibly even hook out into the ocean, not even affecting the U.S. We might be talking about Bermuda more than anything as far as where this storm is going to affect, and obviously the Leeward Islands as it gets closer. We can see now we are at 35 mile per hour sustained winds, 1,007 millibars in pressure. That's expected to drop, and we are moving west at 12 knots or 14 miles an hour. So we are tracking in this direction here, as most storms do, along this warm water belt off the West African coast here. As you can see here, many of the models do have this reaching tropical storm status, and even one just touching that category 1 level. We will see more of this chart, the model intensity guidance chart, as we go on in time. We don't want to use this too much right now because we have a lot of time in between, even just getting to the Leeward Islands and then Puerto Rico. We have a lot of time in between there. I believe it's about Saturday. Let's verify that. And yes, we can see here by Saturday, 8 a.m., we should be just northeast of the Leeward Islands, maybe a little closer, maybe a little farther, depending on how the speed changes during that time. But again, we do have shear wind to the north and to the south of the storm, which does actually weaken these storms. It doesn't allow them to form the way they want to, but it's kind of in a pocket right now where it's allowed to form, and they're expecting, as it gets to about right here on Saturday, that shear wind is going to come down and actually weaken this. That's why we don't really expand past the letter S as in storm. We don't get into H as in hurricane. We are going to hit that tropical storm round, I do believe, sooner than later. And by sooner, I mean as in today, later on today, we could see that happening. But as we look at these spaghetti plots, you can see the number 48 there and 72. That's how many hours away that time period is, or where they think the storm's going to be at that time. So we have a pretty tight-knit group right here until we get to just about the top of the Leeward Islands, and in between there and Puerto Rico is where we are expecting this thing to loop up. The high pressure in the Bermuda Atlantic is going to release, and hopefully this thing curls out into the ocean without giving us too much of a problem, but we just simply don't know at this point. Way too much time to predict this thing going back out into the Atlantic, and also too much time for us to predict any sort of landfall. So right now we're kind of just tracking Tropical Depression 11. As you can see here, we do have some activity going on in the Pacific Ocean. I'm going to start covering this a lot more, as we're expecting a lot of activity to blow up there in the coming days, and then it's going to shift over into the Atlantic. So we're going to see a lot of activity once again by the Caribbean and that warm water belt that comes from the West African coast, and then a lot of stuff in the Gulf. The Gulf waters in some areas in Florida, I believe I saw, were in the 90s. The actual water is 90 degrees, so that is certainly very warm and certainly capable of honing storms of significant size, and that includes hurricanes. Not just hurricanes, but significant storms. We just had a major situation going on in the middle of the country I'm going to make a separate video about, where we lost about a third of the crops in about a 12-hour period from a single state, which is unbelievable. I believe it was Iowa. Iowa lost a third of its crops just in a 12-hour storm. So that is some unbelievable stuff we are dealing with in the middle of the U.S., let alone hurricane season, which is about to start reaching its peak time. All right, focusing here on Ventus Sky, we got Tropical Depression 11 right here. We're just going to float through a couple of these days and see what kind of ideas we're getting from the GEM model. All right, so we will go from the 12th, which is today. You can see the storm right back here making its way towards the Leeward Islands. We go to the 13th, tracking along. Here's the 14th. We see some strengthening in that upper right-hand corner. That quadrant is always usually the strongest part of these storms as the wind is in a counterclockwise movement. Here is Saturday the 15th, where we expect the storm to just be starting to affect the top area of the Leeward Islands. Again, this may change this path during that short period of time, but as of right now, this is what Saturday's showing, and we'll take us through the weekend, and we'll kind of stop there because we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves with these predictions. So by Monday the 17th, the storm is expected to be above Dominican Republic, Santo Domingo, the capital, right down on the southern end of the island, and then we got Haiti here. So this is going to be crunch time between the top of the Leeward Islands, and by the time it gets over Dominican Republic is going to be very important. And in between there, we will talk about Puerto Rico, and then I believe we're going to be talking about Bermuda, which is hard to see on this chart. It's right in this area here. We're going to be talking about Bermuda and how this storm will affect them if it's not going to affect the United States. And I just want to mention this article again because a lot of people have been asking about the names and what happens when we run out or if we get close to running out. But again, this article here I found is on clickorlando.com. I'm sure you can go to Google, type in Click Orlando, and then type in Alpha Beta, and I'm sure this article will pop right up. That's basically how I got it. So once again, guys, 19 to 25 named storms expected, which brings us over that 21 number of named storms that we have already set for that year. We will be going into the Greek alphabet, which is something you usually do not talk about in the month of August. It's usually something that comes up in the middle of the peak hurricane season when we get close to running out of names. But to have this conversation in August is unbelievable, and it's definitely a record-breaking season. We just got to wait and see if some of these hurricanes themselves are going to break records like we saw in 2005 and then more recently in 2017 with Harvey, Irma, Maria, and those storms that basically set a new precedent for storm watchers and what to expect during a hurricane season. It's become very popular to cover hurricanes and stuff like that, and that is in big part due to the 2017 hurricane season, specifically Hurricane Harvey, to start that all off. So we will be following this very closely. We are on our 11th named storm, possibly 11th named storm. More than likely will be Josephine, and we are in the second week of August, my friends. All right, that is the update for now. I will be back with that storm that trekked across the entire middle of the country, specifically Iowa. I will be talking about that later on. I hope everyone is safe, and thank you for sticking around for this update. Shout out to Canada as always, and thank you guys so much. I will be talking to you very shortly. Bye-bye.